well, okay, that's good.
And let's see. And can you, hey, Scott,
Yeah,
can you send Tom Fox his login information?
yeah, let me see, whether I will begin soon. Did you start it? Because it says it's answered.
It starts, people are joining. Hi, everybody. Just give us, we're just getting things started. Hi, Andrew.
Recording in progress.
Vince, you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
Perfect.
Hello, Toppin. How are you?
Hey guys,
We're
I'm
just
good, thank you. Can you hear
We're
me?
just now joining on the webcast. We'll give it just we're 3 minutes early, so we're on live. So we'll just put it on mute for just about 2 or 3 more minutes, and we're waiting for Tom Fox to join.
All right.
This is the Albemarle logo showing the right orientation? Because I can switch.
Yes. Yep. It is. Yeah. It's not reversed. It looks just fine.
Okay, perfect.
Here's Tom. Hi, Tom. So can you just do a quick sound check, Tom? Want to make sure you can hear okay? Yep. There you are. We're just waiting. Attendees are signing up right now. I think, and I believe we're on. I clicked start webinar. So everybody, welcome to our podcast on data-driven compliance. We'll just get started in about 2 or 3 more minutes. We'll let a few more people attend. So we'll just put it on mute.
Tappan, how do I pronounce your last name?
Last name Debnath.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, rather than introduce you guys, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your professional background and your current role.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tom.
All right, we'll give it, we're about a minute or 2 away. That's very good. I'm seeing some old friends and colleagues on the participants list. So welcome everybody. We'll get started in about another minute or so, and Tom, I'll turn it over to you to kick us off when we get started.
Great. Oh, do you want me to go 50 minutes or top of the hour?
Let's try to go maybe 50. we'll play it by ear because maybe there might be, it depends on the questions and there might be some Q&A. So let's plan on 50
Okay.
and then we'll check the Q&A.
Okay.
And we encourage people to ask questions. So. Begin there. Okay, I'm showing 1 o'clock. We'll just give it an extra minute for anybody who's registering. For those that didn't make it, we had almost 200 or 175, I think, registrations, which is fantastic. We'll have, for anybody who didn't miss it, or just for if anybody knows, we'll make anybody who registered will get a copy of the link so that they can listen to it at their leisure. So we are recording this.
Are you guys handling the recording on your end, Vince?
Yes. Yeah, I have the
Okay.
recording.
All right.
All right. Well, Tom, I'm showing a minute after. We're still seeing attendees climb, but we're showing about a minute after, and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'll just say on behalf of konaAI, thank you, gentlemen, for joining this podcast on data-driven compliance. I'm truly honored, Tom. Super grateful for you, the voice of compliance, to moderate this group. And with that, I'll turn it over to you to kind of lead the conversation amongst the three of us. But really, it's about Andrew and Tappan.
Great, Vince. And thanks so much. Welcome, everyone, to one of the most significant first webinars of 2024. And it may be because it's the first, but it's certainly going to be one of the most significant, because we're going to discuss leading innovations in data-driven compliance, a discussion with Andrew McBride from Albemarle and Tappan Debnath from ABB. So first of all, welcome to all of our attendees and welcome to our guests. I'm going to ask you all to talk, or rather tell us a little bit about your professional background and your current role. And Tappan, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Vince, also for giving me the opportunity to join you. It's a pleasure to be on this webcast. I saw the list of participants, and we have stakeholders and colleagues and professionals from different corporations, so it's great to see. So from my side, I'm a UK qualified lawyer. I've been working in this space of compliance and investigations and so on for the best part of 10, 12 years, but overall qualified for around 20 years. As I say, in the UK, I've had a stint at the Serious Fraud Office, and then after that, for the past few years at a couple of different in-house roles. My current role with ABB is as Head of Integrity, Regulatory Affairs, and Data Privacy for one part of ABB's business, which is effectively split up into 4 P&L entities. And in this role, it's a really broad role. And clearly, one of the key focuses for us that we'll be talking about is how we're managing compliance and integrity risks, and how we're utilizing data to help us move from more of a reactive footing to more of a proactive footing in this regard. So very happy to be on this call.
Andrew?
Yep. Thanks, Tom. And I'd like to echo Tappan's thanks to Tom and Vince for the invite to talk about data analytics and its role in compliance programs. So I started out as in private practice as an antitrust lawyer, and that was really my first exposure to data analytics. So I would work fairly closely with competition economists on the calculation of market shares and market concentrations and other market-related data. I then moved in-house. A recurring theme throughout my career has been natural resources. So I was an in-house antitrust lawyer for BP, and then I moved on to BHP, the world's largest mining company. And while at BHP, my areas of responsibility grew from antitrust to other areas of compliance, but the recurring theme was the use of data to support the program. And that really kind of carried on through to Albemarle. So I joined Albemarle back in 2018, initially as the Chief Compliance Officer, and built out the program, built the team here at Albemarle. And then there's perhaps a recognition of the increasing kind of complex risk profile that Albemarle and other companies face. I was appointed Chief Risk Officer, so I retain the responsibilities of Chief Compliance Officer, but I am also responsible for enterprise risk management and insurance at the company.
So this webinar is particularly prescient from the perspective of the compliance practitioner for a couple of reasons. First of all, in late November, we had a major speech by the Department of Justice where they specifically called out the need for data-driven compliance or data analytics in a compliance program, in my mind, moving it from cutting edge to best practice. And frankly, it may move down now to even table stakes. Second of all, both of you guys have been part of team efforts around data-driven compliance. Tappan ABB has been implemented this multiple years ago and moving forward through the pendency of your FCPA journey. Andrew, your team was able to use data-driven compliance to help you and your company through that journey. And in the settlement resolutions, the Department of Justice called out your work in that area. And I know you have a lot of pride from both for your team and what you've been able to accomplish. And I wanted to maybe start with Andrew, how do you define a data-driven compliance program?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And before I kind of address the question, I would like to emphasize your comment about it being very much a team effort. And we'll talk about, you know, the core efforts of the ethics and compliance team and then supporting functions, not least IT. But I appreciate the feedback. So that definition of the data-driven compliance program, I kind of slightly rephrased. I was kind of thinking about this morning of, you know, what is the purpose of using data and data analytics in the support of the ethics and compliance program? And I came up with 4 kind of key buckets. So first and foremost is risk identification. So you can use the data and the analytics as part of transaction testing and auditing to identify problematic behavior. It obviously supports the conduct of investigations, and then it can also highlight areas of residual risk. So where are your employees traveling around the world from a risk perspective? Are they traveling to high-risk locations? Or is there an increase in the number of use of high-risk vendors, perhaps because you've got some significant capital projects that are happening in a particular country? So that's one area, risk identification. The second is risk response. So you can use analytics as a form of control. So here at Albemarle, we use analytics as a way of a gatekeeper. So we connect 2 different systems, our third-party due diligence system with our Salesforce system. If our Salesforce, our due diligence platform is flagging that a particular sales representative is no longer approved or no longer certified, it is telling Salesforce to shut that particular sales representative down, meaning that the sales team cannot issue a quote. So you're using data analytics to serve as a control. The third piece is then testing the effectiveness of your ethics and compliance program. And I mean, I think here it's very relevant to whether it be the Albemarle NPA or any NPA DPA, to take a look at attachment D and then also attachment C, because the focus of the post-reporting obligations that Albemarle and other companies face is really about the testing of the effectiveness of a compliance program and the criticality of data in supporting that. So if you think about each element of a compliance program, policies and procedures, training, due diligence and pre-approvals, the speak up and your investigation process, a recurring theme throughout that is the role of data to really test that those elements of your program are working as you intend. And then as a subset of that, to test how the compliance team and supporting gatekeeper functions are working. How long is due diligence taking to run? How long is it taking to undertake investigations? And then finally, reporting. So clearly the role of data is instrumental in the reporting that you have with internal stakeholders, and then with your board. And that reporting could take many forms through dashboards, the utilization of metrics, and the incorporation into presentations. And so in my mind, you have to look at it through those four kind of like different lenses to really understand the true value of data analytics.
Tappan, I was struck by your opening remarks where you talked about moving from a reactive program to a proactive program through the use of data analytics. Could you maybe tie how ABB has been able to at least move forward, if not accomplish that, through your data-driven compliance program?
Yeah, I mean, look, what Andrew said is really kind of resonating with me as well. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about, exactly similar types of buckets of areas where data can help. But particularly in terms of your question, Tom, about how we're kind of using data to move into more of a proactive footing rather than a reactive footing. I mean, typically, a lot of what we do is responding, if it's not to an investigation, it's responding to a business need to, go into a new market, work with a new sales channel, a new customer, etc., and assessing what the risks are involved with those types of different activities or the outcome of an investigation. So really a big part of us kind of responding to the deferred prosecution agreement that we're under right now, and we've completed year one. We had the anniversary on the 2nd of December, and our strategy for year two and going forward is really be able to utilize all of the great data that we're mining right now, whether it's on the vendor side, the customer side, on projects, etc., and be able to issue spot. So we do a lot of work right now to identify trends. So where are the issues cropping up, whether it's geographically, whether it's on a particular business, using a particular type of going to market, whether it's through sales channels, etc., and then kind of being able to address those specific risks by additional controls, and controls is really a key point for us as well. As Andrew mentioned that data can help to enhance controls. So how are we moving from this footing to being more kind of proactive? Well, for starters, we've created something called it's a platform in a nutshell, and it's called the Continuous Monitoring Platform, which is geared towards looking at vendors and customers and projects and getting data and being able to use that data to map against specific risk criteria that we've put into the tool. So this has been worked on for a few years with internal data analytics teams, starting from fresh with a clean slate, building this capability up. We've used konaAI to test some of this, and thanks to Vince and team for doing a great deal of work on this to kind of validate where we are, that it's working, and also give us a lot of input into how we move forward. And really, we're thinking, how do we move forward? And we're looking at expanding on what we're doing right now to really hone it in on specific identified risks that we've been seeing across the business, and using that platform to kind of kickstart our next phase. So there's so much work going on right now, a lot of resources being devoted to it. Next step is, in a nutshell, to move to machine learning capability, and then after that to AI capability to kind of be a bit more predictive. And this is where konaAI and other vendors are really going to be crucial in our journey. We've got, as I say, great in-house capability building all of this, and I can talk for ages. I'm not an expert in this area. We've got so many great people working on this, but I can talk for ages about how we're trying to move forward, and the various parameters that we're looking at, and the various kind of discrete next step projects that we're looking at.
And Tom, real quick, if I could add, just a comment on both companies. It's so refreshing to see, both these companies integrate all the hard work they're doing around the due diligence systems, which I would say, most of the companies, and even on, most of the companies in the audience have a good due diligence system, background checks, et cetera, in those processes and questionnaires in place. But to see it actually move into taking that due diligence information and moving it into actually testing of transactions. So yes, our due diligence has identified a high-risk vendor. How much have you paid them? Or how much have you paid them over the years, or what have you? That linkage is so important now. And I think that's, when I think about a data-driven compliance program, it's not just having a good due diligence program, it's also having a due diligence program that integrates with the actual conduct of the business, where, when invoices are being generated, payments are being made to third parties, that's where the risks happens. Due diligence is super important, but having an integrated, process between those two systems is to me, that's what's data-driven.
Andrew, if I could circle back to you in terms of what were some of the retooling or tech investments you and your team either put in place or perhaps even built internally, which allowed you to move forward in the Albemarle journey?
Yeah, and it has been a journey, and it is probably worth starting very briefly at the start. We started small, so with full transparency, we had a dependency on outside vendors. The first time that I saw a Tableau dashboard, it was mind-blowing for me, but we didn't have that kind of capability to build those and the supporting data. And so we relied on an outside vendor to kind of help put those first dashboards together, which focused on third-party sales intermediaries and travel and expenses. But then we also realized that there were particular use cases where we thought that analytics, there were particular vendors out there where analytics, they had an offering which was for a discrete purpose that we could take on, and it would fill a perceived or particular gap. And so on expense management, we already had an expense management system. They had incorporated an AI type of expense review. We felt that that was an interesting supplement to the dashboarding that we had done. Similarly, our due diligence provider utilizes AI for its kind of lower level risk screening. And we found that that was a very helpful labor saving device for us. But we also realized that just having a complete outside dependency on analytics, wasn't sustainable, that we wanted to build that internal capability ourselves. And so I took on a data scientist for a period, really to help me set up the architecture of what I wanted to achieve from an ethics and compliance data. And over that 6-month period, he was a great intermediary between myself and the IT team and outside vendors to really kind of set up where were we going to store the data, how was it going to be organized, what the associated governance was going to be. And then that very first dashboard that we put together to using that underlying kind of structure took a while. But then the more that you do, the easier it becomes. And we were able to become more adept at pulling data in, not just from SAP or from Salesforce, but from other sources of data as well. And that, to Vince's point, is where you get the real value. When you're combining different data sources, it can tell a picture which is greater than the sum of the individual parts. It's really very valuable. And so that got us to a certain point, and working with our data analyst on the team, who was an absolute rock star with going out and bringing data together and assimilating it, we also recognized that there were particular scenarios where we needed to go back outside, and that's where konaAI came in. The volume of data on the procurement side is so great that what we needed to do to address the false positive issue is be enhancing the latest technology to really be focused on those high-risk transactions. And based on the feedback that my team give on whether or not it was a transaction of concern, our algorithm is learning, which means that the number of false positives becomes less and less. And so that for us has been the journey, is an initial outside dependency, then bringing it in-house, and then a more curated kind of discussion and selection of what is the appropriate analytics solution for us for a particular aspect of our ethics and compliance program, and then also beyond into things like human rights, modern slavery, data privacy, and other areas.
Tappan, if I could turn to you and ask you about the continuous monitoring platform. Obviously, you have multiple constituencies. You have a compliance function that's a part of this. You have a obligations to the Department of Justice, but there's another constituency, which is the business unit and the folks that are actually out there making the sales. Could you talk about how you were able to either integrate the business unit in to the continuous monitoring platform, or perhaps even more importantly, how can the business unit use the tool that compliance has created to do business more efficiently and hopefully at the end of the day for ABB more profitably?
Right. Well, Tom, getting the business on board with everything that we're doing from the compliance space is really crucial. And we've been working on this for several years. And the way we've been doing this is making data and information available to the business. So kind of demystifying what's going on behind the scenes when it comes to, let's say, assessing risk, giving approvals on transactions and so on. So part of this process has involved, one, giving visibility where we can on investigations. So we have close alignment with the senior business stakeholders involved where, let's say, an issue has cropped up. So they're not surprised at the end of an investigation that something has happened and there needs to be remediation, terminations, etc. As part of this, we also make available one-page learnings on cases, really anonymized. So this goes out to not just the leaders, but the whole business. So kind of demystifying what goes on on the investigation side with, adequate safeguards for data privacy, human rights, HR type of topics, not disclosing too much. That's one. But when it comes to, the other sources of data that we have two key platforms that are available. One is called the Integrity Analytics Platform, available to everyone across the business. It is the repository for data on certain integrity KPIs that we have. And we have one on trust, which measures cases being reported anonymous versus named. And this can be kind of crunched down into business units, geographies, and so on and so forth. And that is a little bit of a barometer on, is there a potential issue of people fearing retaliation and high numbers of anonymous reporting. We have also a data KPI on transparency, which is conflict of interest declarations. So conflict of interest, as we know, can be a precursor for other types of issues. And we monitor this and crunch this down to various levels. And the final one is engagement, which is people going onto our portal to take trainings and measuring, how that's going on. So this is a little bit high level. But then we have a separate platform on investigations data, which is available to the L&I folks, and that gives more detailed data on cases and so on. Separate to that, we have something called the Integrity Gateway. The Integrity Gateway is a tool that we've developed over the past few years. It's for declarations of conflict of interest. It's for approvals for gifts, travel, and hospitality, which go above a certain threshold and therefore require approval. So that data, again, is able to be analyzed, put onto platforms, given to the business, and so on. We also have, reporting, as you'd expect, on a monthly basis on integrity insights. So this is the business areas looking at what is going on in the business, what are the key insights that the leadership need to be aware of, and we report on this on a monthly basis. So bringing the business on board with the journey by way of making data available has been really fundamental. Then going to how is the business kind of utilizing this and supporting us. Over the past, let's say, 6 to 8 months, as part of our reporting on the deferred prosecution agreement internally and what's going on, how are we kind of demonstrating our program is effective and so on, we've been bringing the business along in the journey with us. To be fair, some of the businesses buy into all of this is driven by risks that are occurring on a real-time live basis within their business. So they're seeing a risk. They're then appreciating that the need to kind of not keep the same way of operating, responding to a risk, but trying to be on the front foot. So with some of the things that we're doing with data analytics and moving to a proactive footing, the business are really supporting us on this. And in fact, they're helping us to drive some of this now. So we've got project teams who have been stood up in one part of our business who want to really look at this and drive this. And we're having separate discussions on how to kind of mine our data lake and make that data available not just to certain select people, but our data analytic guys within the business who are supporting us with getting onto that proactive footing. So apologies for the long answer, but there is a lot, and getting the business on board has been really key, and it's been one of our successes, quite honestly. And I'm seeing really, the leadership really buying into this, and as I say, really driving some of this.
I want to turn the focus just a little bit, because one of the real values in my mind on having both of you guys here is to perhaps guide us through, if not pitfalls, perhaps some challenges that you've either faced and overcome. So Tappan, could I just follow up with you with what were some of the sort of high level challenges that you and your team at ABB had to work through? And then Andrew, I'll pitch that same question to you.
Okay, Tom, I'll keep this one a little bit more brief. So one clear and obvious challenge is just around really, we have great ideas. We want to do this and we want to get to there. But sometimes there's a little bit of lack of clarity of exactly what is it that you want to do. So having a really kind of clear, defined goal and process steps to get there, I think is really important. The way data is hosted for us, and probably for a lot of organizations, is in lots of different places. And there needs to be a lot of kind of data cleanup before we can, utilize and use data. That's another one. A third challenge for us has been also, getting hold of data in different jurisdictions. And, let's say there may be data privacy laws around data transfer. There may be blocking statutes around this same thing as well. And so kind of navigating the local law requirements around data transfer, getting a hold of the data, all of those things have been key challenges. Kind of resourcing internally how to do this, getting the right external stakeholders to support as well. These are really key fundamental steps I think need to be ironed out and looked at really early doors.
And Tappan, if I can comment on this too, and for the audience, in fact, I was just talking to a company this morning on this topic, is that because we're doing, many these proactive monitoring, you don't have to have perfection be the enemy of good. And, because this is not an audit, this is not a financial statement audit, and it doesn't have to, the data doesn't have to be perfect and 100% complete in order to get started. One of the observations that we have, with both your companies too, is that it's a journey. This is not a project. A project is a defined start and stop type of deal. This is more of a business process, which it's going to start off at the beginning and you're going to have some good tests and results, perhaps, and then it's just going to get better over time, and the models are going to get better and the data quality gets better. And Andrew, I think, you've seen that with your data too, is the journey that you've taken. It's so much better now than it was 6 months or a year ago, even just in terms of the data cleanup, right? It's a journey. It doesn't necessarily stop. And so it doesn't have to be perfect day one. And because oftentimes I see companies wait months or weeks for the data to finally get perfect before they get started. No, just get started and then improve. And that's when you learn and you get better and over time. And Andrew, you mentioned data quality improves because you just get better at it. And the reporting gets better and you get more ideas once you start using it. So my point there is don't let perfection be the enemy of good. I think that's what they say. I think that's what the saying goes. I probably got that saying wrong, but
So Vince, literally, my first kind of bullet in my notes is be wary of perfection, right? And I was exactly going to go in the same place. Is that in some respects those pitfalls are not necessarily a bad thing, because that's where you learn, and you just learn. You just fail fast. And there have been, some dashboards that we may have put together that haven't worked for whatever reason. Maybe it's the data quality challenges. Maybe it's that it doesn't meet that so what test, right? You've done a dashboard, but people aren't using it, which raises the question: well, do you actually then need that and all of the work being put into creating the dashboard? And then to Vince's point, it is an iterative process. So many of our dashboards we started, and then we refined and we improved. And actually that's part of the fun, is kind of seeing how you can kind of make the quality of the information and the story that the data is telling you richer and richer. And that point about the project, I was smiling because, in the earlier days where we were working with a contractor, they were putting pressure on me to define the start, the middle, and the end of the project in which the team was working on, and I'm like, it's not like that. It's a lot more flexible, it's a lot more fluid, a lot more nimble in terms of how we are going to create these. And so that flexibility is key. I would also say that we're a Fortune 500 company with 8,000 employees. We do not have within the ethics compliance team a huge kind of like data analytics team. We have one data analyst, two now, and we have the great support from our IT department. And so I wouldn't want people to think that to develop like a really great ethics compliance program, that you need a cast of hundreds to be able to do this. If you've got the support, particularly of your IT function, and you've got the right roles doing the right thing, then it's possible.
Andrew, if I could follow up with one of the points you made very early on, which was utilizing data analytics as a control. That's not something that we really talk about, or at least we haven't evolved to having that discussion on an ongoing basis. So I wanted to ask you to maybe, if you could say a few words about how you've been able to utilize that. And then we had a question come in that's related to that point, which is, could a company set up an AI program which would at least assist as a control in the fraud, risk management, and compliance arena?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I go back to that kind of like the so what, right? So when you're running data analytics, there has to be some sort of thing that happens. And so I mentioned earlier, there are some situations where you can hardwire a control that triggers to a reaction. Obvious examples of that are sanction screening. If there's a flag on a counterparty, then there's an automatic kind of temporary block until it's been reviewed and cleared. That's a great example of data analytics, and then the control being the block, the temporary block on the third party. And it's the same then with the integration between our third-party risk management platform and Salesforce. The salesperson cannot issue a quote until all of the boxes have been ticked on the third-party due diligence certification side. Then going back to that so what question, you're generating kind of analytics perhaps from a transaction monitoring point of view. You've really got to be careful about the resources that are needed then to actually review the results. So for any analytics exercise that we're doing, you have to be thinking, what are we actually going to do with this data? It can't just sit there and no one look at it. You've actually got to review it. And then if you are reviewing it, who's doing the review? And is there a challenge with false positives? If the team is then being drowned in a whole wave of false positives, then it becomes almost counterproductive. And so this is where the segue to kind of AI comes in, because in my mind, I don't mind the team kind of starting out with a new like AI infused algorithm. And yes, there may be a relatively high number of false positives at the start, but if through provision of feedback, the algorithm gets better and better and better at identifying the genuine transactions of concern, then it frees up my team to be focused on other areas. And so I see AI as a means to actually improve the effectiveness of the monitoring and to reduce the burden on the team that are doing the follow-up. Now, here at Albemarle, we don't have that AI kind of capability on the transaction side, and we looked at the range of providers and we selected konaAI, and part of that reason was because of not only the benefit of the improvements to our own algorithm, but through the participation of the broader integrity distributed consortium, we were getting the benefits of feedback from other companies and what they were, what the results from their algorithms were feeding in, and then indirectly benefiting us as well. That to me was a very compelling cost proposition, rather than trying to do it in-house, was to go external.
And Tom, if I can comment real quick on this too, there's a lot of questions coming in on, how is AI being used? And it's funny. I do a lot of writing for Fraud Magazine, and it's going to be the March issue. It's interesting, and for those on the call, to put things in context of how AI, practically, there are three categories of analytics maturity. There are the descriptive analytics, and this is just class, old Gartner. There's descriptive analytics, which are the rules-based tests, and that's the foundation. We all use rules-based tests. And then as you train the model and as you tag transactions, just like in the old email days when you find a smoking gun email and you say, find me more like this using technology-assisted review, the same concept works for transactions. When I find high-risk transactions and the team tags it, that is predictive analytics. Find me more like this, statistically similar. And that's where the integrity distributed model, gosh, and we owe an update on that, because at the time we processed about $75 billion worth of transactions across the corpus. And right now it's over 150 billion. I mean, there's a lot of data in there that are now being tagged to use to train the model. But prescriptive analytics was still very, very hard, and we weren't able to really get it. And prescriptive analytics is not just what's going to happen, but what should we do about it? What are the 5 things that we recommend to the user? And this is where the chatbots come in, perhaps, where we think about, again, you can see this on the demo site, but now very soon, chatbots will be pushing the dashboards. And I say that very soon, like 2024, instead of clicking on a Tableau or Power BI dashboard, you're going to be talking to a chatbot and hey, show me my highest risk transactions, between this date range and this date range that have the word training in it or whatever. It will then push and navigate you, that will drive the dashboard. And then of course, was that helpful? Yes or no, that trains it. But that's still not prescriptive. Interestingly, with generative AI and the building of large language models, and again, many of us are being asked by our stakeholders or IT, what's compliance doing around AI or generative AI? Interestingly, without having to send data out to OpenAI, you can build these domain-specific large language models that would then perhaps, like, what if we could take every single DOJ and FCPA enforcement action and every single, I'll say Tom Fox podcast or Tom Fox book, or everything that was written about our company's policies and procedures and thresholds, and put that into your own LLM that could then be integrated with your payments. Again, this is visionary, but this is 2024 kind of thinking, in the coming months, what's ahead. And it's really exciting to think, all right, not only can I have a predictive of what's going to happen, but here are the 5 things that we should do about it based on case history and what the DOJ has done in the past, based on my company's policies, based on what the transactional data is telling me, that's the top of the pyramid. And it's an article I'm writing on in Fraud Magazine in March that goes from, can LLMs finally get us to prescriptive analytics? We tried it before. I wrote an article. We tried piloting it with GE many years ago, back in 2018, where we tried to do it, called Digital Twin. It was hard, but with an LLM, it might just work. Tom's helping us build it, and we invite others to contribute, but stay tuned. And I just wanted to, in answering the question of where AI is going in compliance, again, that's not the only place, but that's an example of how we think it can finally get us to prescriptive analytics through generative AIs and large language models.
And Tom, if I may very quickly just build on something that Andrew mentioned just now about okay, you've got your tool, which is doing the transactional analysis, is coming up with red flags. What do you do with the red flags? And absolutely, you need to have that resource capability to be able to review the red flags and so on. And just kind of sharing an example at ABB, we've had instances of our tool picking up red flags, which have then been assessed by the analytics team and then passed on to the investigations team. And the investigations team have actually conducted a review and come out with some findings and so on. So it is picking up issues in that sense as well.
Let me just stay with you, Tappan, and ask what if someone, a compliance professional, a chief compliance officer, perhaps even a board of director, wanted to start the journey that ABB has been on. Do you have, how would you counsel them to start their journey?
So look, I think a lot of this has been spoken about previously, which is, you've got to start somewhere. And don't worry about making mistakes. Don't worry about having, as Vince and Andrew have been saying, a perfect place to start off from, a launch pad where, all your data is nice and there's no kind of anomalies and so on. Make the jump, it's going to be worth it. And Andrew made a really, really fantastic point, which is, doesn't matter about the size of your organization. If there's willing, please just push it through, because it's going to add value, no doubt.
And Andrew, if I could ask you, in the journey that you and your team have been on, how would you counsel a company now starting? We've talked a lot about it's the journey, not the destination. We've talked about, as Tappan just said, start somewhere. You talked about, or Vince talked about, let the perfect get in the way of the good. And I know you and your team have been on this journey for some time, but how would you counsel the company who is starting that journey?
So I think that you have to think about, there's only so many finite resources, so you have to prioritize where you're going to focus. So if you're going to start small, where do you start? And that's going to be driven by several factors. So your risk profile clearly is one. The amount of resource that you have available to support the analytics effort, whether it be within compliance or in partnership with IT or outside dependency. The quality and the accessibility of the data. I will say that there are many compliance peers, when I've told them that we have one global iteration of SAP, they get quite emotional about that. I mean, it was a massive kind of boost to us being able to move quicker. For other companies, they're not so lucky. They may have anything up to 30 or 40 different ERP systems. And so then that kind of necessarily lends you to perhaps focus on one or several rather than the complete totality. And then also being, thinking smart, being driven by your audience. So one of the key philosophies that we have instilled in designing any new dashboard is, yes, I might have a need for a dashboard, and my audience might be the compliance team as part of our execution of the ethics and compliance program. But if we're doing this data analytics exercise, can I help other stakeholders by sharing that information or improving on the information that they already have? So for example, two examples of that would be travel and expenses. I want to have a T&E dashboard to monitor for fraud, corruption. But we also share that same T&E data or similar version of it with management as a cost control measure, and then a health and safety measure of where are our employees traveling around the world, which was actually very relevant during COVID. Secondly, thinking about using a particular data analytics use case for multiple compliance purposes. So pricing monitoring clearly is very important from an anti-corruption point of view when you're looking at the issue of discounts and the like. But then it's also a very effective tool from an antitrust risk management perspective as well. You're looking at different kind of pricing trends throughout the year, whether there's kind of unexplained activity, does that trigger a reaction? And then improving. So when we were working with our sales team on that pricing dashboard, we realized that the work that they were already doing to kind of track their sales only went down to a certain depth, and we wanted to get down to the individual SKU level. So we actually helped them improve their data set. And so from a branding point of view for ethics and compliance, it's almost as if we have become a data analytics service to other functions to help improve their offering, their data analytics solutions. It makes us look good, but it also helps us kind of use our information for our own compliance purposes.
Yeah, let me just follow up with a little bit different direction. What are some of the questions the people who are overseeing your compliance function asking? So whether it be a regulator, whether it be an internal auditor, whether it be an external auditor, what are they asking in terms of documentation to demonstrate the effectiveness of your programs? And let me start with you, Andrew.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that we were talking earlier about successes and the use of data, and I think one that I would want to kind of particularly focus on is another example of the so what, and then the associated documentation. So now, because of the various data analytics use cases that we have developed over the months and years, we've got this really kind of like rich data set that can help inform a much richer risk discussion. So the DOJ talks about the importance of risk assessment and not moving away from the concept of the snapshot risk assessment. And that's something that we're very much embraced in that, perhaps in the old days, the concept of the risk assessment is that you would have someone go visit an office once a year, and that would be the opportunity to go and learn information about what's going on at that site. We've kind of flipped that on its head, where we do have those site level engagements with local leadership, but we come to those conversations armed with information. We have access now to much more information that leadership does not have about their own operations. And so we combine that objective data from transactions and from investigations and from training, along with some local employee surveys, and then we democratize that information with that local leadership. And it's amazing to see then the discussion being sparked about what should we do about what is this data telling us? And we in compliance will come with our own views, but it's amazing to see site leadership reacting to the data and having their own perspectives, as they rightly should. And to the point about documentation, we have that data documented. We have the engagement material with the local leadership team documented. And then the remediation that comes out of those discussions is also tracked through to completion. And that to me has been one of the real values of the data that we have collected in its totality.
And Tom, can I add something to Andrew's comment? Because I don't know, I wanted to give a shout out, because this was what Assistant AG Nicole Argentieri commented at the November ACI FCPA conference. And I'd like to just read this quote from her. because I was asked by an editor to comment on this, but she said, you know, and representing the DOJ, just as we are upping our game when it comes to analytics, we expect companies to do the same. In fact, we cited Albemarle's NPA, its use of data analytics to monitor and measure its compliance program's effectiveness, as an example of its extensive remediation. Companies have better and more immediate access to their own data, and you can be sure that if a misconduct occurs, our prosecutors are going to ask what the company has done to analyze or track its own data, both at the time of the misconduct and when we are considering a potential resolution. And again, you know, that was a pretty clear shout out I think it was a compliment to you or to the Albemarle program, but it was just plain as day clear that that's an expectation now. And having a documenting the tests that you run, the activities that you do, the data sources that you have is, you know, very important, I think, in terms of building that program, not just doing the analytics, but showing you how you took that risk-based approach and documented the process.
Kevin, if I could follow up with you, we've had a question that comes in, I think is probably directed towards you, because you made the point about the difference in data and insights and delivering insights. And could you give an example or two where you felt like the insights delivered really helped in either the business unit or in an area, as opposed to simply just reporting data to some group or function above you?
Yeah. So look, it's quite easy to use the various dashboards and so on to produce some nice graphics around, you know, what's going on, investigations on gifts, travel, and hospitality, transactionally, et cetera, et cetera. But what is that data actually kind of showing? What are the insights and what are the actions, the actionable insights from that data? So maybe as an example, what we've found from doing a kind of ABB group-wide analysis is that there's certain risk themes coming up across the business, and this isn't isolated to, you know, one part of the business. It's across the board. So those risk assessments could be, for example, you know, a geographical hotspot or, you know, trending area. It could be where misconduct involves a certain type or a certain kind of topology, if you like, where it's using third parties, whether it's on the supply, on the buy side or on the sell side. Or it could be, for instance, where we see a lot of misconduct being driven by a certain level of management, whether it's, you know, at the middle level. So, you know, those types of insights, the value we're bringing to the business, the insights we're bringing to the business is first and foremost telling them about it, so they know where the risks are, and then coming up with some actions to address those risks. So if you're seeing, as we are, some geographical issues, what do we need to do in that geography to address those risks in that business? So coming up with action plans around those identified risks, but then kind of looking at it from a strategic point of view as well, rather than just keeping it at that kind of tactical, actionable level. So what else is going on in the business where you're addressing similar types of issues and kind of coordinating this strategically, so, you know, you're delivering most effective learnings, communications, trainings, whatever it is to deal with those, whether it's also, you know, enhancing your controls, for instance. So if it's adding another layer of control because you're seeing certain issues in a certain geography. So those types of insights, which then kind of go to minimizing risk and at the same time ensuring that the business can continue in a risk managed way.
So, gentlemen, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. I'm going to give a shout out to the konaAI sponsored podcast, Data Driven Compliance, because we talk about these issues every week. So I hope our listeners will check out the podcast. And with that, Vince, I'm going to send it back to you for some closing remarks. You're on mute, Vince.
Yeah, whoops. Well, first off, Andrew and Toppin, thank you, gentlemen, for your comments and your time on this. And Tom, as always, you're a great moderator, and it's fun having you on. And you've kind of done this a few times, so it's always smooth and runs great. I want to also appreciate the questions. There was a lot of questions. I think we answered most of them, and there's a couple more in there, but we'll be sure to follow up and answer the questions in the group. And for everybody who gave us their hour's time, a great thank you. You will get a copy of the link of this podcast so that you could share it with your colleagues or your stakeholders in your organizations. Because again, we want to get the word out. Data-driven compliance is an expectation. Frankly, it's a lot of fun. I think 2024 is really going to be a breakthrough year. Remember, generative AI only came out in November of 2022, and we really only had a year to digest it. And even the tools, we're trying to develop some of these things, and even the tools to develop them are changing as fast as the innovations and use cases. So it's even hard to even keep up with the tools because they change almost monthly. It's just getting better and better. So there's, I think, a lot of good use cases for it. But again, it's not about using AI for the sake of AI. It needs to drive a decision or solve a problem. And so practical use cases is key. Andrew Tappan, any closing remarks from your end?
I mean, the only thing I would say, and I suspect Tappan agreed, to the extent that people are going through their ethics and compliance data analytics journey and they want to kick the tires, soundboard, happy to by all means reach out. Happy to help out.
Yeah, Vince, I echo this as well. I'm more than happy to take a call and just discuss things. But otherwise, just to say thank you again, and thank you for the audience participation and questions.
Yeah, hopefully we're able to help some folks in their decision process. So everybody have a great rest of your day. I'm actually in Las Vegas today at the CES conference, and you can bet AI is all the hype here. I'm going to go back and walk around the floor and see what else is going on. So thanks everybody for your time. Have a great day. Tom, thank you for hosting, and we'll sign off.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
All right, gentlemen, thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Vince. See you later.
Take care.